Ever notice how it feels almost painful to get yourself to do certain tasks? Or like there's a complete block to even start, even when you want to do something? This is super common with ADHD and what we'll explore together in this episode. When we feel blocked around a task and don't find a way to do it, we could end up with unfavorable consequences like penalties and fees, losing things, having people more mad at us, or even having more disorganized spaces, all of which exacerbate our ADHD and can lead to shame. And there are three questions I ask myself and address to help myself do these things in a less painful way. I'm going to share them with you in this episode, so be sure to listen. Welcome to the Self Loved ADHD Woman's Way podcast. I'm your host, Jen Barnes. If you're an ADHD woman entrepreneur, ADHD adjacent, or ADHD ish, you've come to the right place. We'll dive deep into the unique challenges you face, from the inner turmoil to the outer obstacles. We'll blend neuroscience, IFS, and somatic healing and explore practical strategies to help you navigate the world of entrepreneurship with ADHD with greater ease and effectiveness. I'm glad you're here. Hey, it's Jen. I'm so glad you're here. In this episode, we're going to talk about the pain of doing tasks. The thing is, a lot of us with ADHD have things we want to do and we know we need to do, but we might in some way feel blocked, or doing it or getting ourselves to do it actually feels painful, emotionally painful. And a lot of times, our neurotypical loved ones or others in our lives who are neurotypical just don't get it. They think we're being lazy, they think we don't care. And the reality is sometimes it can just be painful or we can be blocked from doing something. So I'm excited to really unpack this together. First, sitting with you in how hard this can be. I want to share a couple of examples because I'm going to come back to them when I share how to get yourself to do these things in a less painful way. And for sure, some of the things that feel just too painful and we can't do are things that we need to find a way to delegate or even automate, or maybe see if we actually need to do them. In this episode, we're going to more focus on those things that we have to still get done. So recently, I received a letter from the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service. And if you're watching this from outside of the United States, that is part of the Department of the Treasury of our government that we pay taxes to. And when you get a letter from the IRS, I think most people are like, ah, because they usually want money or you've done something wrong or they're going to audit you. And so rarely is it good news when you get a letter from the IRS. So I got a letter from the IRS in my business, and I've at least gotten to the stage in my business where I know to open it right away because I've had enough consequences of waiting because I was too scared to open it that I found that approach of just avoiding it and trying to make it go away doesn't actually work and makes my life worse. So some might be like, I can't even get myself to open the letter, Jen, and that's fair. And you'll be hopefully helped when I talk about what to do, the questions to ask yourself to help yourself do these tasks. But I received this letter, I opened it, and I felt a complete freeze over my body. My brain was literally blocked around, I couldn't even read, like I couldn't understand the letter. Even like I can read very well. And I started out as an accounting major, was an actuary for almost 4 years. So it's not like I'm usually scared of financial stuff. But I just felt this block, like I couldn't even understand what the letter was saying. And I wanted to get myself to do it, but it felt painful. So you may have had an experience like that. Another thing that can be common, and I notice this in myself, is folding and putting away laundry. I can get it in the washer and dryer, but it's the whole process of folding it and putting it away. And believe me, I Marie Kondo things. So I roll them up instead of fold, but I still call it folding. And I've got a lot of things that go in my closet, although that actually feels more painful sometimes to put things in my closet. I don't really understand what that's about. And, or maybe I do, but that task itself can feel painful. Washing my bathtub feels painful. Like doing my hair and makeup, which is why a lot of times when I shoot videos, I'm wearing the same outfits because I batch them because the effort it takes to do my hair and makeup, which PS, the thing about this is those tasks together, if I don't even count washing my hair, which a lot of times I do, but then don't straighten it, probably only take about 10 or 15 minutes. But the reality is, it feels almost impossible, even painful to get myself to do them. And I gotta believe that if you're listening, you may have had some of these experiences. And if you haven't, maybe other ADHDers you know have. So I want to talk about this today and what we can do because a lot of times people from the outside, whether they're our loved ones, coworkers or bosses that we don't know that well, or just other humans, think we're being lazy or that we don't care. They may even shame us. Heck, we might even shame ourselves. And none of that is actually, first of all, it's unkind and lacks compassion, but none of it actually helps us do the thing. It's very ineffective for helping us do what we need to do. So I first want to name that's common and just share that I get it. I also sometimes have these struggles. A lot of things I've figured out how to get past. And because I was able to figure out, okay, what am I going to do with this IRS letter? I've got to do something. I figured out how to do that. And even though I've tried different things over the years with my laundry, I had let it go more than I usually do. So I had 3 weeks of laundry to fold, and then it felt almost unbearable. So I'm going to share the three important questions I have been asking myself to get over that block, that hump of being frozen. So, first and foremost, before we even do that, is acknowledgement that this is a struggle. Even just naming, like, oh, okay, I'm having a really hard time with this. Even just naming about that IRS letter that, oh, yeah, I don't even want to, I'm having a hard time. It's not even that I didn't want to do it. I wanted it to be done, but it felt overwhelming to me and I felt some fear. But we'll get into that in a moment. But I just, I think it's important that we acknowledge that something is happening where we feel blocked. And it's not that you're a bad person. And it's not that you're lazy. It's not that you're a piece of shit. It's literally something about how your brain is wired is blocking you, which is why we're going to ask some questions. And when questions are answered in the affirmative, I'm going to share what you can do about it. So the first thing I ask myself after acknowledging that, I am feeling blocked on this task. I feel like I literally can't even do it or even think about doing it, to be honest. So what needs to happen? The first thing I ask is, what big feelings am I having about this? What underlying feelings am I having about this? And I particularly look for things like fear, doubt, overwhelm, and even hidden insecurity, which I'm a pretty confident person. And I think a lot of people who follow me have a lot of achievements because we were overfunctioner high achievers. That's how we masked our ADHD. That's how we got by. And so, what can be sneaky is even we can have some hidden insecurities that we might not be aware of when we're faced with a task like this. For me, what was coming up was fear, because usually a lot of us were taught to be afraid of the IRS because they don't play. They're serious. They want their money. They want their documentation. If they don't get their documentation, they want more money. And they fine you very quickly with lots of penalties that don't go away, even if you ask really nicely or explain that you have ADHD. So I noticed some initial fear coming up. I noticed it in my body, which is something I'm going to do a YouTube video about, is our trouble with connecting with our body. So I'm going to shoot that today. So it'll come out in a couple weeks. So if you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel already, I'll put the link in the show notes. But the first thing I did was I noticed in my body, okay, I feel this huge pit in my stomach and I feel this like vibrating circle. Not vibrating is not the right word. It was just like this tizzy of motion in my chest that I noticed. And that was my fear and anxiety about the task. I also noticed feelings of overwhelm because what I thought they were asking once I had gotten past enough of the fear, I thought they were saying that the numbers I shared were incorrect for my 2023 W-2 and 2023 quarterly tax reports, quarterly wage reports, which is something that if you have an S corp, if that's the kind of business you have, then you have to do that. So I felt really overwhelmed because last year when we did my taxes, we had all kinds of discrepancies with this. It was a lot to figure out. I thought we finally had it figured out. And so it was a pain last year, hours and hours between me and my accountant to the point where I hired someone to do my payroll this year because it was just so overwhelming. And even though I have a history of working in a financial field, I didn't do this task often enough to correctly remember all the little tiny details and moving pieces every single quarter because it was so rare that it led me to finally hire someone to do my payroll. And now here this is on my doorstep. And so I was feeling really, really overwhelmed. And the first thing I did was validate my fear and overwhelm. I validated the parts. I even feel it coming up in my body as I'm talking about it, even though I completed this task earlier in the week. But I still feel that those sensations in my body, and you might notice your fear and or overwhelm or doubt or hidden insecurity in other ways. For me, it often shows up in my body, but if you're feeling blocked, it may be some of what's going on, and you might even notice thoughts. So what I did is I actually leaned in and got curious about what the fear was about. What is the overwhelm about? That's why I can tell you so clearly what it was about. So I sat with the feeling. I was like, okay, what's the fear about? What's the fear about? And I held space for it. And the parts of me feeling the fear were expressed fear about the IRS, fear about having to pay more money, fear about doing it wrong. So then I'd be in trouble, like all of it. And so I listened to those parts and I worked with them, validating them and letting them know that I could handle this. They didn't have to do it. Because a lot of times, our parts that hold fear are younger parts that actually don't know how to do the task. So I worked with those parts and then I shifted towards the overwhelm. What is this about? And that's when I was able to understand by leaning in, getting curious, and listening that the overwhelm was because we already struggled with these numbers and now they were wrong again. And I was feeling super stressed about having to even look at them again because just the way it was done was like not super clear to me. So that's what that was about. And so once I was able to work with those feelings, then I was able to get myself to do the task, but not right away. There was one more thing I noticed going on, and it's a question that I recommend you ask yourself. Am I regulated? Is my nervous system regulated? Because if you're still in your fight or flight or your shutdown response around the task, you're not going to be able to do it. Because when we are dysregulated, when we are in our fight or flight or shutdown responses, those responses are only about survival. The only thing your brain and your body prioritize, I mean, they're the same thing, brain and body, but just to make it more clear, your brain and body are only prioritizing safety and survival in those moments. So that IRS form, that laundry doesn't matter. It doesn't matter even a tiny little bit. It doesn't matter. And so it's important that you then take the time to regulate your nervous system, assuming that it's safe enough to do so. There are times when it's not safe to regulate our nervous system, like if we are running from a tiger, which is rare, or if someone is actively in the moment harming us, verbally or otherwise. And so there may not always it may not always be appropriate to regulate your nervous system, but when you're trying to get yourself to do something, it is important to regulate if things are otherwise safe in your environment. So I regulated my nervous system and then I was actually able to do it. But I did one more thing because I felt overwhelmed. I broke it up into tiny little tasks. Some of it I had to do because I didn't have a big chunk of time to even deal with it. But I broke it up into tiny little pieces of the task so that each task, when I thought about how hard it was to do that piece of it, was a 3 out of 10 or less, with 10 being the hardest possible task, 0 being like so easy it doesn't even feel like it takes effort. So I broke everything down till it felt like a 3. And then I just knocked those little tasks off one by one over a couple days. And then it was done before I knew it. So the next piece, and this isn't necessarily one of the questions, but if you're feeling overwhelmed, it's important that you break things down into tasks, that into steps of the task that are so simple. You would give it a 3 out of 10 if you were to rate how hard it is to do, with 10 being almost impossible. When you've done that, a lot of times you can just go do the task. Sometimes you may need to ask this additional question, and this is where my laundry pain comes into play. So I'm not really afraid of doing my laundry. I'm not overwhelmed by it necessarily, although doing like folding laundry is a multi-step process. So a lot of times for those of us with ADHD, anything that takes multiple steps can feel like too much because we feel like we're doing all of it at the same time, which is how I do my fold my laundry. I once watched a YouTube video of someone, this was brilliant, but I don't have enough clothes to do this with. But she had separate laundry bins for all the things that went in the same area in her closet or dresser. So she washed all of her sweaters together. She washed all of her long sleeve shirts together, all of her workout tops together, all of her workout bottoms together, including yoga pants. She had all the stuff that was hanging washed together, and they were all in separate bins, laundry baskets, so that when she took her clothes off, she just put it there and then would wash the clothes from each bin one at a time. And then that way, everything that came out of that bin, out of that load of laundry, went to the same place. So you didn't have to sort it and then fold it or roll it up if you Marie Kondo your dresser and then put it away. So it took out one of those steps, which I highly recommend if you have a hard time with this, is breaking things down into steps, seeing how you can make this easy for your ADHD brain. Instead of fighting like, oh, that's not how quote unquote normal people do it. Yeah, that's not how neurotypical people do it because their brain doesn't work the way our brains work. So see if you can find ways to make things easier. Like her idea was brilliant. That's a wonderful way to do it. For me, I still, for some reason, because like I said, I don't have a ton of clothes. So I would have like nowhere near a half a load of laundry with doing it that way. So it doesn't make sense for me, but you might find some other way. But what you can do then is if you're having a hard time getting yourself to do it and you've already done that, it might be overwhelming. So we've addressed that. But then for me, the question I ask is this interesting? Is this interesting? And guess what? Folding laundry is rarely interesting for the ADHD brain. There are some people who love it. I don't know. I've met those people. I fail to understand what makes it interesting for them, but that's awesome. So happy for you if that's you. So for me, I have to make folding my laundry interesting. And because I don't watch TV anymore, I unplugged my TV May of 2024 because I was not able to stop myself from like binge watching. It is a special treat for me to watch even like an episode of Schitt's Creek on Amazon Prime has a freebie, free free TV. I can't even remember what it's called anymore. Freebie. Anyway, you can watch Schitt's Creek there. And so I'll watch an episode of that. Sometimes it takes two as I fold my laundry. This last weekend, because I could not get myself to fold my laundry for 2 weeks in a row, which usually my rule is I don't get to go more than 1 week, more than 2 weeks. Well, I did. And so I had the tallest mound of laundry to put away ever. I let myself watch the Super Bowl and watch the whole thing even after my laundry was folded and put away so that I was more interested in doing it because I was doing something interesting at the same time, and thus it made it more interesting. I have a friend who she chants mantra while she folds her laundry. I don't know that she has ADHD, but I love that she chants different mantras, so it could be almost meditative, right? If you're not sure what a mantra is, at least for me in my experience as a yoga teacher, mantras are basically, I would say, sayings that you repeat over and over. So a mantra is Om Shanti Om, which is basically peace. It's a mantra for peace. You might also have heard of other mantras. A really common Buddhist one is Om Mani Padme Om. Om Mani Padme Om, Om Mani Padme Om, right? You may have heard that. There's other ones too that people chant. So you could chant a mantra or put on the radio and sing, but do something to make it interesting. There's at least 6 ways you can make a task interesting. Novelty and challenge are 2 of them. So if you can make it novel or create a challenge or competition, like I'm going to see if I can do this task in 15 minutes, sometimes that can make it interesting. So the 3 questions I ask are what big feelings are coming up that maybe I'm unaware of? Am I regulating my nervous system? And is it interesting? And if you're like, no, or I've already addressed those, Jen, like I've worked through the emotions. Have you really though? I'd really question that if you're still stuck, but I'm regulated, check that you are, and you found a way to make it interesting and you're still struggling. I highly recommend body doubling. So either having a friend that you're sometimes I'll be on the phone with a friend while I fold laundry, but doing a task while you are on video with a friend or on the phone with a friend, if you can be on the phone, you don't even have to be talking. Just turn it on mute and have videos on while you both are doing tasks. And if you're like, I don't have any friends who would do that with me, there's an app called Focus Mate, Mate, and I'm not an affiliate for that, so I'm just sharing it because I find it helpful. FocusMate is an app where you can designate, first of all, like who would be a fit for you. So you can say only women or only men or both or whatever. You can have more quiet body doubling, or if you want to have conversation with people. So there's different settings you can set to be able to do body doubling on that app. And at one point, you got 3 sessions per week, though it doesn't matter the length of the session. You just get 3 sessions per week. So if you choose a 25-minute session, that counts as one. And if you do a 75-minute session, that counts as one. So just know that there's different times. But at one point, you got 3 sessions free, but you can also sign up for this if you're someone for whom body doubling really works. All right, y'all, that's what I'm going to share today. There's a lot more that I teach about nervous system regulation. So if you're interested in learning more about that, I have a monthly challenge right now to help you regulate your nervous system with ADHD. So I'll put that information in the show notes so that you can sign up if you're interested. I'll make sure that's in there. And a lot of this stuff I teach in my program, Ascend. So I work with ADHD women entrepreneurs in a very high touch manner. You get 12 one-to-one sessions with me and then interaction with each other, a weekly call on top of it, as well as about 8 hours of content videos just to help you overcome these inner and outer challenges of ADHD so that you can do the things you need to do for your business if you have one, or even just in your life. So if that interests you, feel free. I'll put that in the show notes as well. But if you're like, Jen, I barely know you, you're welcome to join the challenge. The challenge is very low cost. It's $19.97. The first 25 people, if you're signed up on my email list, I send out a coupon code for 50% off. So it's $9.97. And I made it super easy. So there's not a lot you have to do to get the result, but you also get contact with me if you want it and can get to know me more and just see if you're someone or if I'm someone you'd even enjoy working with. So I'd love for you to check out those options and feel free to leave a comment or leave a review about this episode. That helps me be able to get out to more people so that I can help more people with my podcast and other ways of being. So thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time. Take care.